What is going on, Degen Nation? Tyler Tamboline here, bringing you another Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast this week for the Cognizant Classic, and I am very cognizant that this is the Honda Classic, and we will probably call it that throughout the show. No Kenny Kim for this week as he is away, but we got our resident fill-in favorite, as always, Mr. Ryan Baroff. Baroff, got to bring you in, man. It's an event right in your hometown right there. I wish I could be there. I opted for the Waste Management Phoenix Open, but this is a tournament I love. Excited for this one. We got Rory here. Get into all that and more in a minute, but how you doing, my friend? What's going on?
It's nap time, baby. Still surprised he's in the field, but yeah, super excited about this one. I think we talked about it a few weeks ago. I had a feeling this field was going to be better than people thought, and it definitely is. So yeah, pumped, have a pretty jam-packed week planned, but certainly looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I think we can do some other shows. So we'll talk about all that after. Excited to have you on for this one so we can break it all down, hear about the course, got some thoughts and insights on it, but we do have to talk about last week. Before we get into last week, I want to remind everyone very quickly, this show is brought to you and presented by ShipItNation.com. You guys can go over there and check it out. You can use the code Mayo to get 10% off. Baroff, everyone's got the same thing. You said it yourself, nap time, baby. People said, don't sleep on him. Jake Knapp. I had to come up with my own, be original, wide awake Jake, because people were certainly not sleeping on Jake Knapp. He was bet all over the place. Lots of screenshots out there. Love to see that. The ownership was up, but he did well, and he came through, man, even with a bit of a rough Sunday to be expected, but either way, came through, got the job done. Like you said, he's still in the field. I saw him taking the shotguns afterwards, but the interesting part about this, because you and I chat offline more than online like this, where it's basically you've been on this guy since he came out, and if you remember, it went like, I forget what the event this was now, 5 or 6 events ago, where everyone's like, who the hell is Jake Knapp, and why is he 20% owned? But you were on him. And it didn't matter what he did that week. It was that you just knew about this guy. You said it's going to be something. Man, that might have been his only real bad week, right? The rest have been pretty solid, and now goes out and gets a W on his 5th start. So talk to the people a little bit about that and why maybe you were on him well before others were. And now congrats to you getting the job done with the win last week.
Yeah, I would not have been okay if I missed that one. Obviously, you know how often I bet him last year, how close we came so many times. But yeah, when he came out, so it would have been the Sony, which was his first start. He was probably 250 to 1, like down very low in the 6K range. But we don't have a lot of really good stats on the Korn Ferry Tour guys. So obviously the things you look for are the consistency, the winning upside, and then the ball striking. And he has the distance. Obviously you saw the iron play. So like that skill set can get you pretty far. And I think, I don't remember, maybe it was the Smiley podcast, but they had him on a couple weeks ago. And he was talking about his journey and talking about courses and his game and stuff like that. And he said weeks ago, he had Mexico starred because he saw that Tony Finau won here. He knew that this was a golf course that you just had to hit it far and just had really good vibes. But yeah, obviously great form, was playing great Farmers, almost won that. He didn't have a great finish in Phoenix, but he played still pretty well, despite a pretty poor weekend. Awesome to see. Really happy for him. If you want to talk nicknames, I was calling him Jake Snap on Sunday morning because that was getting snappy very, very quickly.
Yeah. There was a lot of good ones. I mean, people say like he was a bouncer. And they had that one come out this week, so sort of bouncing his way off the leaderboard on Sunday when Valimaki makes that eagle, and they're like, oh shit, here we go. The Joker give, and here we go. We were watching.
That was terrible, man. That was terrible. That whole.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing was it was kind of a 2-horse battle. It's really tough to make up the ground that heavy on that course. So he kind of like you said earlier, I think you could shoot a 2 under and still be good. And in the end, it was I think he shot even, but he still ended up getting the job done. So either way, solid for him. I think I saw him in Phoenix. He looked good there. I saw you a little picture of him. I saw right with Jake Knapp. I'll send you this over, your boy. And then he goes out and gets it done. But yeah, you were betting him a lot last year, letting me know about him quite a bit as well. So nice to see him get the job done. It was interesting. Otherwise, it was the Smiley podcast that you talked about where he was on with Smiley Kaufman talking about marking the calendar. Saw Finau did well here. Finau, man, T13, wouldn't even have known he was playing the whole week. Like, didn't even know he was there, and he ends up coming T13. It's just the way it goes with these. We'll talk about Rory when we get to this week's kind of interesting. But anybody else on that leaderboard? I mean, Steven Jaeger, 3rd. He comes through. When Kenny says he can never do anything, this guy comes through and gets a T3, at least did something. But CT Pam, Bobby Mack from the clouds.
It was a cool leader, right? I mean, obviously Sammy was up there, one of our young Euro guys. That guy's going to be a stud. Kind of the new Bobby Mack, I mean, not that Bobby Mack is old, but kind of the new version of him. Obviously EVR was up there for a while. Patrick Rogers is up there for a while. Our guy Ben Silverman, Chan Kim. There's just a lot of really fun dudes up there. So, yeah, really good crop of young players. I'm excited to see if they can do it again this week in a slightly stronger field, because pretty much all of them are here again.
Yeah, definitely excited for this. We can move on. Let's go to our Lister League winner. We'll talk about that one quickly and round out last week's stuff. I don't know, is there anything else in the world of golf you wanted to talk about? I don't get you on here too often. We got Anthony Kim coming back. I don't know if you want to bring that up now or later, but go ahead.
No. We get, yeah. I mean, very excited for it. Again, like most people, I think I'm just more excited to see if he talks. If it speaks to the media, if he answers questions. I assume they'll give him a fun pairing with like Phil and those guys. But yeah, look, he wouldn't come back if he didn't feel like he could at least play a little bit. I expect him to probably finish kind of middle back third of the pack. But yeah, I'm just way more excited to see him talk and answer some questions.
I wonder how much the books will take in. The 150 to 1 they threw out there is like, come on, please.
Big number.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure they'll get a lot in on it. Like, people will just take a shot and not want to miss out. But I guess one thing I saw today, a little bit of the chatter out on X, FK, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, like people saying about, the media piece that you mentioned, and we get it. Like, we know why you want that interviewer, you want him to talk a little bit, but what else is he going to say? Like, what do you think is going to be said if he does speak to the media?
What he's been doing for 10 years, because it doesn't seem like he's been working, obviously. He had big insurance money. Seems like he was maybe playing a little bit of golf, but I mean, people saw him in LA, they saw him in Vegas, there were photos from nightclubs, just seemed like he was having a good time. I don't know his personal life. I don't think he's married. I doubt he has kids or anything like that. So just, yeah, interested to see what he's been doing for the last 12 years.
Yeah, it's a long time, man. It is really. And you say like the fun part of it, sure, people have seen him at nightclubs or things like that, or maybe out on a range or whatever. It was almost like Bigfoot stories. Like, oh, I think I saw him on the range. It's like, okay, but like, what's he actually been up to? It's such a long time. So yeah, I'm excited to see how it goes. Probably the first time I've been excited. I'm not against the live coverage. I don't talk about that on here too often or anything, but we went and I've watched it plenty. Like, I do like to see these guys down the stretch. The night under the lights with Neiman and them, like, that was hilarious. Just lots of fun stuff that we've seen, but this is definitely one I'm going to tune in for. So not betting him at 150 to 1, but definitely excited to have him back into the game of golf. People will say whatever, exhibition, he's washed up, whatever. We'll see. It's still fun. It's an interesting thought they could have done a better job on the trailer video. What's that girl's name? Claire Rogers. And she said it best. I've never seen someone make a hype video with all Dell desktop wallpapers. It was just like random as could be, but nothing about him. So yeah, all right. Well, we'll get into it. Let's talk about the Lister League winner from last week. You mentioned it. Knapp, easy to fit in. Well, when you went to Finau, still worked. Finau, Steven Jaeger, Knapp, Novak, Valimaki, and Hayden Springer to score 630 points. So shout out to Seth SGA. You'll join us this week. It'll be a 5-man, which we'll talk more on in a second because we'll get Baroff in there, Kenny, and then we did have a winner in the comments this week. I think it's the first time someone actually picked the winner, as is the case for most people this season. Shout out to our guy, Pat Mayo, shirtless from the beach, finding a winner. But give me your thoughts on this lineup. Finau, Jaeger, Knapp, Novak, Valimaki, Springer.
Yeah, really good team. Obviously, Hayden Springer was a key to that lineup with how cheap he was, but also his scoring, eagles, streaks, all of that. Obviously had the winner there. You didn't see a lot of Finau, Jaeger, Knapp teams, that's for sure. I think the key to the week there was he did not have Sam Stevens.
Yeah, Novak, the pivot, obviously. Stevens was 7,100, Novak 7K. You could say about Valimaki too, a little bit cheaper, all of that. But we'll note with this set, again, shout out to Seth SJA. Congrats to you. We'll see you in the 5-man. But this pricing is back for this week. We'll get there in a minute when we get into breaking it all down. But they brought the 5K range back. What did you think of that last week? What was your take on it? What do you think it's good for the game? Did you think it was done right? Because they didn't really bump Finau. They left him at 12K, even though he was a huge.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it was kind of weird because you would do that if there was a guy who they bumped up, right? And again, like, same thing this week. Like, yeah, Rory is quite a bit higher than anybody else, but I feel like he's not high enough. When we've seen the pricing like this, I think it was probably the match play, right? When they did like really, really weird pricing. And Scotty Scheffler was like 14K. Maybe it was the Tour Championship a couple years ago.
I think it was one. I was going to say it was maybe like Ryder Cup or Tour Championship.
They bumped them up to 14K, and then like the 4,600 5K golfer made sense. But yeah, like I feel like all this is going to do is it's going to inflate Rory's ownership a bit. People are just going to realize, oh, I can get Rory plus Eric Cole and pretty easily and go from there. So.
Yeah, I will note too, again, we looked earlier, did the first look, Hoop and myself on the Ship It Nation YouTube station. We brought up the optimal from last week, and it obviously didn't need Finau. It had like EBR and some of those guys. Now, it did fit a 5K guy into it, but I'll note that it scored 680 points. So it's like, it's not necessarily like this is 630 and blew the field out. You could have easily popped the 5K guy up to somebody else, whether it was Novak or someone else in that range, not like a Valimaki who was obviously already on the optimal lineup, but there was ways to get away from that price range and still score well enough to win GPPs and satellites and all that sort of stuff last week as well.
Yeah, like my team was okay. I mean, it ended up as a 4 of 6, but it was a 2v2. The two that missed cut was a 2v2 off the team that won the 200 single entry. It was Knapp and Valimaki was the winner. I had Sue and Stevens. Like, very easy pivot to make, and I probably did it for ownership reasons. But I think the lineups were there last week for sure.
Let's hope they're here again this week as well. Obviously, good to have you on to go through this one. Let's talk a little bit about the course here in a second. But before we do, just want to let everybody know. So the comment contest has been a big success. It's been a lot of fun. You're watching this on playback. We don't record this live. So as you're in the chat, or if you're listening to it on a podcast, go to YouTube quickly. Leave in the comments below who you have winning this week's event. And then make sure you leave your DraftKings handle as well, because then we send you the 5-man. Last week's winner was Otten BT03. OTTEN BT03. Picked Knapp. There was somebody else who picked Knapp, but you were first. We go by the timeline when it comes to that. So Otten VT03, you will join us in the 5-man. We've had one person already this season get through that way as an additional way to get into our Tournament of Champions with tons of cash, prizes, etc. at the end of the season. So let's move on, Baroff. Let's go to this week. Let's talk about the course. You know it quite well. I've got some early insight. I got some friends down there as well talking to me too. They said very fast, very firm, baked out. They said they just, one of the caddies he knows was out there this morning, said that super fast. He thinks they might even throw water on it before the weekend because it's just before the tournament starts because it's that dried out. But you're in the area. Talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing at the course and then what you know in general when it comes to this place.
Yeah, I mean, obviously haven't been out there yet, but we've had rain here, but I mean, not enough that it's going to be wet. And again, the sun bakes it out, the wind bakes it out. They like that course plan pretty fast and firm. Always windy, right? So I don't think there's going to be much out of the ordinary. Again, always have to talk about wave draws here, not just for weather, but for wind. Even if there is no pre-tournament edge, I think you do this really well. You still build those teams, right? Not just by the wave, but almost like blocks of tee time stacks. So,
yeah, I love doing that in general. I think a lot of people focus on it because they think it's just a weather advantage thing. Like I have to do it because this week is PMAM because the wind or the rain or the storm or whatever it might be. Those actually more times than not get knocked out because there is like a delay or a lightning warning or something that screws it all up. What you actually end up doing is blocking out natural chalk. Like it's just a natural pivot off certain chalk pieces. And then you wonder, well, how did that guy get off of Stevens in that spot? Well, it's because Stevens was in that draw. I was on this draw, and it just happens to work out that way. So little things like that I got no problem with. But at this course, especially anything with, I saw the banter back and forth, if you will, around the extension, the par 71 now, and anything there. What's your take on any of that or anything else with the course that you just
know? I mean, that'll boost DraftKings scoring a little bit. It doesn't really change the tournament that much other than there's that extra par 5. So it opens up, opportunities for birdies and streaks here. I guess you'll see a few eagles, not too many. It's still a hard hole. It's still a hard golf course.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for this one, again, I don't want to say course history, but course fit, guys who play well in Florida, like this is some of the stickiest history. And again, not necessarily course history, but Florida, Bermuda history. So I think the guys who stand out are the guys that everyone's going to be on. So the key is going to be how many 6-6 can you get, and can you find these right 5 and 6K guys?
Yeah, and you mentioned that. I love that call when, so at Shiba Nation, we got Lee Aldrich over there, formerly of Fancher. He does these course fit rankings, really solid. I always followed them in the past, but the way he puts it together is kind of just like what you said. It's really tough sometimes to tell on a course, like, oftentimes we know the sticky course history. It gets brought up all the time. But another thing we know about this course, it's not usually one to come into and get right. It's very tricky. It's very challenging. We've even seen, tons of spots on Sunday where there's leaders that have trouble with it, or, the chasers come through and find them and all different things like that. So I do think the course fit is probably the best way. And there's some guys I'll ask you about throughout when we go through it here, but let's hop into it. Anything with the stats you want to bring up? I mean, we just talked a little bit about, but any stats before we go to this upper tier?
Yes. A couple things. Off the tee, again, if it's windy and it's firm, everybody is going to struggle to hit fairways, right? So I don't think you need to weigh driving accuracy. It's certainly going to help to hit fairways, but everyone is going to miss fairways, right? You just have to miss them in the rough and not the water. I think the other one, last week, obviously everybody was hammering distance, especially like the approach shots from over 200. You won't get that quite this week. It's more of that 150 to 200 range, even some shorter. Like there are plenty of holes here that these guys will be hitting wedges into. So I think, again, mostly 150 to 200, but even some of that like 125 to 150. Yeah, much more shorter irons than we saw last week.
And you think that's the case? I mean, if these greens stay fast, like what we're hearing right now, I mean, there's got to be something to some of the around the green stuff. We've always seen this in the past. Some of these just skilled guys. Look at a Lowry. What do we know about Lowry? I mean, he shows up here for whatever reason every year, but I think it is part of it is when we've seen the last couple of years and had some of these faster and firmer conditions, just some of those bump and runs and around the green thing. He's just so good with his hands. Reason he's a winner of the Claret Jug and won the Open that year was the same type of thing. So do you think it's going to be some of that as well mixed in?
Yeah, I think so. And again, with the approach play, it's not just the buckets, but it's the clubs that they're hitting in, right? If you get like a downwind shot, even from the fairway with a 6-iron or 5-iron, you're not going to stop it on these greens. But if you get somebody like a Cam Young, who we'll talk about, who's hitting wedges and 9-irons, he will be able to stop it on the green. So like, yeah, we're not just crossing out Cam Young because he doesn't seem to be a good course fit here.
I like that too. I actually like that angle that you just brought up for sure. It's different, a way to get naturally different with the real concept behind it of what we just talked about, tying it all together. So let's get into these tiers. You just made me think about something when you said that, like the Eric Cole. Didn't he have it? Like, remember, wasn't it last year when he had the chance to get it? Like he could have won. That chip, man, it just went too long, and we're like, dude, just let it coast up, and it just floated past the hole, and I was like, damn, he had his chance there. But either way, we'll get to him in a second. He was 6K or in the 6K range last year, I should say. Now up to almost 10K. But let's go 10.1 and up. We got Rory, who you mentioned, 12.2. We do have a 5K and up range this week. We noted it earlier. But Rory, Cam Young, Matty Fitz, Russell Henley, and Tom Kim, who looks to get extremely squeezed here because Henley and others above him, and then Cole, Post, and Im, a lot of the favorites, Benny Ann, those guys below, which we'll get to that range in a second. So give me your first thoughts on this upper 10K range.
It's strong. I mean, I don't really have good arguments against anybody. I think, like we talked about, and we will talk about, the pricing is going to lead you probably more towards Rory than you normally would be. Like people might say it's not a good course for him, but then they're like, oh wait, I can afford him and still get 5 guys that I'm okay with. I think they're going to go there. If I had to like pick one that I probably didn't like quite as much, guess it would be Fitz. He just seems not quite 100%. He's trending up from where he's been. He's obviously local now, plays down here out of the Bears Club. So the course, the conditions, the wind, he'll have no issue there. But I think it's a clear Rory number 1 for me. And honestly, probably Cam Young number 2. I think people will play these other guys, even Russell Henley, over Cam Young. So if he's going to get squeezed a little bit, I have no issue going there.
Yeah, I saw early this morning, Mayo was out and about talking about Matty Fitz, and then I realized he had his shirt on. He's back home. He's not on the beach. So I feel I'll be in with him in the studio on Wednesday, but I'll probably be going against him on that one. I actually don't have a lot of interest in him. I'm with you. I think if you're going up, regardless, it's just Rory separates himself. The price didn't separate itself enough. There's tons of guys. When we get down low, I've obviously already done a first look, so I know what's down there, but keep in mind that. But in general, it's the other two for me are what you mentioned were Russell Henley and Cam Young. And I know you chose Cam Young first. I'm probably fine with that. I think if you look at it, he's not trying to get right. He's got a 3rd, an 8th, and a 16th in 3 of his last 4. I love that kind of tidbit you dropped there of just kind of thinking out loud concept-wise of how this could work for a guy like him. And then we know what his upside and capability is, so I don't have any problem with that. Speaking of what I mentioned earlier, Opens, I know it's totally different, but the year, what was it? Him and Rory came 2nd and 3rd, right? When Cam Smith goes and gets the job done. So maybe there's something to that, but I do think in general, you could see Cam Young come through here. But Henley, the history's good. 24th, 4th, couple of the stats and stuff that I was looking at. I think he's fine, but it looks like Tom Kim and Fitz will be the ones that go at least a little bit overlooked as people get very excited about this next 9K range.
Yeah, I think so. Back to Cam Young for a second, but yeah, he had an 8th and a 3rd at the last 2 Open Championships. The ball striking as of every event this year has been pretty lights out. And he did play here before, 2022, finished tied for 16. Was one of the best ball strikers. He couldn't chip, but he actually putted these greens pretty well. So I definitely have some interest there.
Yeah, that was the year Sepp won. The magical wind that popped up on Lowry. His ball just stopped.
We all had the Lowry ticket.
Yes, we did.
That was bad.
That was brutal. It was literally like the wind just came out of nowhere, just grabbed it, and took it right to the ground. And then Sepp Straka gets like the perfect calm right setup and just pushes it way out there. I remember Keith Mitchell was out on the green, former winner here, and he was pretty pumped for his other Bulldogs. So let's go on, though. I do think this 9K range is going to be extremely popular this week. Speaking of Keith Mitchell, he's right there at the bottom of this range at 9K. And then you go all the way up to the guy we mentioned earlier, Eric Cole, pushing 10K now. But, well, he did have that one missed cut in there. I mean, he seems sort of back. It's got another 14th and a 10th in the two of his last three. Obviously came second here last year. What are you doing here in this 9K range?
Yeah, but Eric Cole, pretty clear number 2 in the model this week behind Rory. So I think he's definitely number 1 there. Like everybody, I bet Benny on. Think this is a great course for him. Obviously likes it here. And then I would say Kirk and Mitchell, probably the other two that I'll have the most exposure to. I did bet Keith Mitchell at 45 or 50 this morning. But again, if the leaderboard went Poston, Lowry, Sungjae, it would be very obvious too, right? So I think there's merit for all these guys. I like the course fit and the Florida form a little better for Kirk, Cole, Mitchell on.
And I think somewhere in there is the chalk and the secondary chalk of this range. So give me your quick takes on Minwoo, who also saw this course. He saw it last year, came 26th. He's been doing some things, but 9,600 feels like a lot. I get it, but he's super talented. And then Daniel Berger, who, again, coming back from injury. I was looking it up today. Surprisingly, I guess it was the Farmers. He had that rough round of like a 79, but then the other stuff was all fairly decent. So he's had good results here. I'm not sure what you think of him, guys in Florida, all that stuff we talked about, but just quick thoughts on Minwoo and Daniel Berger, and then I'll give some thoughts.
Yeah, I would say Minwoo is probably going to be the lowest zone in this range. I do agree with that. I don't know if people are ready to click Berger at this price, right? When he came back in a weaker field and was 8K, I think that made some sense, especially because that was the Amex where he got 3 rounds no matter what. I don't know how you can click him over Connors or Mitchell or Lowry or Kerr. I just don't see it. So, yeah, Minwoo lowest zone, probably Berger second lowest zone. And then, honestly, probably Poston, even though he seems like a great course fit, hasn't done well here. And I think if people have $9,800, they're just going to find 100 to get to Cole, or they're going to leave 100 and take Sungjae as one.
Yeah, and I got a lot of love for Sungjae always, but I mean, the fact that Mulcair is nice, he hasn't been doing much lately, but fits the course and maybe could bounce back. And the one interesting part is I think Benny, who makes perfect sense to me, at 9,500, and then the Cole, and if I don't have money for Cole, Poston, it has to make it so at least somehow, Sungjae comes in just a little bit squeezed, hopefully. Sure. But, you never know. Maybe it's a spot he can bounce back, though. Hopefully it is. So I do like Sungjae. I like Benny with you. I like Lowry still. I just don't know how this bottom range goes, because I think it's with Cole, Poston, Benny. I think that's where you see people go. So I could say 2 things. Play some of the guys down low. I like Connors and then Lowry as my 2 guys there. Or I think you could actually do the ultimate FOMO play, which we've seen it work so many times, even though it feels when you do it, you hate it, but just skip the 9K range altogether. Make some decisions up top on some of the guys we just talked about, and then we'll get into this 8K range in a minute, but definitely names there we could show some interest in that you could make some comparisons with.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Benny, obviously he's going to be popular because of the form and because everyone's betting him, and they like to click the guys that they bet. What's interesting about him is he's a completely different player. Like, he is actually in this range. Now, he's 12th in my model right now, but in that range, he's basically the lowest, right? And I think the reason for that is long-term, his putting is still showing up pretty bad, right? And he's a much better putter now, obviously gained off the tee, so I'll probably manually bump him up there a little bit too.
Yeah, and he's rating out like Cam Young, basically, in this field. As far as like you talk about price point, I know he's 95, but he's rating out like a 10-7 Cam Young in this field, so you got to keep that in mind as well. But I do think, like I said, between Cole, man, I just never know with Sungjae if he actually will get squeezed, because people still like to get there, including myself. But with Post and Cole and Benny, makes me think that. I don't hate your Kirk call, but I like some of the other guys. I mentioned Connors. He's like a stroke away from us saying it's 3 top 20s in a row and coming in perfect form, as opposed to on paper, it's like, yeah, they're not that good. Where's his ceiling at? It could be this week when we find it, right?
It's kind of weird that he hasn't played better here. And again, he's only played here twice, missed the cut and barely made the cut. But he lives down here, practices on these courses in these conditions all the time. Form is amazing. Plays well at Bay Hill. I don't know what it is, but would definitely not be shocked to see Connors in the top 5 this week.
Yeah, just to be in the mix. I think that's the key. I don't think he's going to be your first guy in. You're not building super balanced in this field by the looks of it, at least with all the guys we've got down low, and then the ability in this 9K range to stack on top of them, on top of the guys we mentioned earlier in the 5-figure range. But let's move down. Let's go Denny McCarthy down to Justin Rose. You know more about some of these guys than most, so I'll let you talk about that. Mainly Rasmus. We saw, he's been on a little bit of a heater of his own. His brother fell apart down the stretch last week, but we've seen these guys in the fields lately. And then, of course, Jake Knapp here, others that you could probably want to mention. So talk to us about this 8K range.
Yeah, I was making the joke, like, is it really Rasmus or is it Nikolai who's just going to play under the alias because he's already down here? I think this is a very interesting range. I think it's going to be completely squeezed. The only one that I can say that I'm going to go out of my way to play in this range is probably Luke List down at the bottom there. I could see playing some McCarthy, but again, I like Mitchell and Kirk and those guys so much that I'm probably not going to get there. I think this is finally a week where we can knock out these guys like Bo Hostler and Matthew Pavon and Steven Yeager, who have really played well in weaker fields. This course is going to get them. I'm not going to play Rasmus. Probably not going to play Jake Knapp. Again, we saw what can happen to him. Seems like a very, very bad spot for Jake Knapp here at 8,400. And then Justin Rose at the bottom, makes some sense, but not a guy I like to click and not a guy who seems to have a lot of upside.
Sepp, I like the 5th, the 1st, the 33rd, the 27th. I guess he's going to be the battle, though, right? Is it recent form or is it course history? Because like I said, I just don't think you come in here and all of a sudden find it, but maybe. I didn't look back yet at his previous years to dig in deeper to see what his form was like coming in those years, but miscut, 26 are his last.
He rates out pretty well, right? So again, it's just that recent form. And again, it's like he's putted really badly, but that's West Coast POA. So are you willing to throw that out? Probably. He gains off the tee every event. He hits a ton of fairways. He can lead a field and show speed approach anytime, any round. You never know what is coming. So if you're looking for, a price pivot, the guy who's going to be probably 7 to 8% owned, I think Straka is definitely the guy here.
Yeah, and I'm going to mention a few, but maybe not get to them all, but just to say a couple things, like Denny McCarthy. One thing you brought up that I think was really good was like it fits probably Steven Yeager, Bo Hostler for sure, like the guys of what you talk about playing well in weaker fields. Now you're coming into what's a stronger field for this tournament, plus a tough course where, they're playing good, but I like Denny McCarthy, I think could still beat up on the seal. He had a 3rd here just a few years ago, a 30th the year before last. Like he could do well, and he's priced ugly at 8,900. So I think people will just be like, that's a bit much, even though it's a Best Buy pricing. Go ahead. Well, what's your quick thoughts on him?
Yeah, it just seems not that this is very surprising, but his only good appearances here are extreme putting weeks, right? He just he does not hit fairways here. He doesn't gain around the green. He doesn't gain on approach. And the putter, he's had a couple of good weeks recently, but the putter over the last, call it year, seems to not quite be at the peak that it was. So it's a lot to pay for Denny McCarthy. That's all.
For sure. And we got a real cut event here, so it could just be that, and then hope to get one of those spike rounds with the putter, make the cut, get a spike round, and now you're in good shape at 89. But realistically, you said it. It's been hurting him though. 39, 22nd, 26, 24 is listing results, but it's the truth. That's what ends up dropping him from that top 10 down to these top 30s and top 25s because he needs that putter to get hot, and that's his strength. So maybe it's something that could pop up, but if you wanted to pivot off, I'm sure people are still going to play McCarthy. Seb Straka is one that I would still say fits it. Like you said, I think one good point you brought up on him, I just sort of talked through it as you're talking, think through it, sorry, I should say, now talk through it, is the miscuts and stuff were some of the putting on the POA and things like that, whereas other results are 2nd, 12th, 26th. There is some other ones mixed in there, so maybe he finds it. Noren is a guy I like, especially fast and firm, just thinking about somebody with those hands in the around. It's definitely possible someone like him pops up. And then I like your Luke List call anytime you're going to have a ball striker. And back to the putting point on McCarthy, why it might be a negative against McCarthy, but as if it's going to be harder for everybody to putt out here, then we kind of like that for a guy like Luke List, where it kind of, evens the field, if you will. And then it would be guys like Noren, List, Straka, and probably that's it for me. Like just sort of those guys that fit the mold of what we're looking for. I like the joke on Rasmus, but he has been tearing it up. What's you know more about those fields than I do. They were some stronger fields. His brother won the DP World Tour Championship when he finished just behind him. He was close at the Ned Bank, which his brother was also up there in. So some of those were a bit stronger, but what's your quick take on Rasmus for some of the results we've seen lately? A lot of top form finishes.
Yeah, so he seems to be coming out of a funk. Towards I guess really most of last summer, he kind of just sucked. He missed 4 or 5 cuts in a row, something like that. Seems to be finding it. He's not quite as prolific and long off the tee as his brother is, but he's a fine putter. He's got an okay short game. Iron play can be spotty. Again, we haven't seen him over here, and this is probably the hardest course to come over here and play. So I'm going to stay there this week.
All right, 18 guys in this 7K range. One note about that, for those that didn't catch it last week, it was the same way. But remember, that makes it so when we get to the 6Ks in a second, there's probably a lot more love than usual, because what happens is a bunch of guys that could have just been priced as duplicates in the 7K range, all at the similar prices, they just push all those down instead. So only one guy at 7,900, one guy at 7,800, and then a couple at each of the other price points. But start at the top, another battle of recent form versus course history. Tom Hoge is coming in off 8th, 6th, and 17th, and he's got 4 missed cuts and a 37th here. So Hoge, and then you can go through the sevens. Just talk through some of these guys that you like.
Yeah, I think so. There's really only 2 guys in the entire 7K range that I'm excited to play. Number 3 would probably be Tom Hoge. I am okay, I think, overlooking the course history here because of how good the form is and because of how he's doing it, right? Just scraping the irons. He's still gaining off the tee. He's been putting pretty well. And he's a better player than he was back then, right? Like these last couple of years, he certainly elevated his game a little bit. I would say the same thing for Fowler, but the flip side, right? The form hasn't been great, but you know that he can play here, is going to be very comfortable here. So like, I think those would be the 2 fringe guys that I would play. But the 2, and I think everyone's going to land on the same 2 every week that are like far and above the rest here are Bez and Svensson. There's just nobody close in this range. And, I'd be very happy just starting with those 2 in a cash build and then going from there.
Yeah, don't hate that. Obviously, they're going to pop. I know some people bet Svensson today for sure. Just looking at the card, I didn't get all mine up here, so we'll talk through your bets later on in the show. But what about some of these price drops? I know one of the pieces that people were very interested in our Discord and up on the First Look show earlier was some of these price drops. Olesen, price falls off a cliff. EVR just had a great result and automatically just drops to 7,400. Rio, 7,300. Who was the other one? Matt Wallace, McNeely, down to 71. Gim should be popular at 7K. So what about some of those guys in the mix? Matt Wallace as well.
I think we still have price drops that went lower, right? Like you have guys who were mid 7s, 8s last week. I played Justin Suit for 8,300. Now he's 6,800. So like you can still save an extra $500 or $600. And is he any worse than EVR here? Probably not. But no, I think Doug Gim's going to be popular again. That's your argument. He's 0 for 3 in cuts here, but is playing awesome. I think
12 to 13, but 3 missed cuts. Yeah, it's last 3 versus last 3 here. Yep.
Yeah, that range, it's just like, I'm not going out of my way to play Shane or Glover or McNeely or Ryan Fox or Evie. Even Mark Hubbard is going to be popular, but, what's his upside? 25th, 30th, something like that. So I'm going to go with those 2 that I mentioned in the 7s, and then I'm very happy to find some guys like in the mid 6K range.
Hubbard does have an 11th and a 15th here before, but... Like you said, and we'll see how it goes with the ownership and different things like that. This range is, 18 guys total. Glover stood out for me a little bit. People make the jokes about him making his tee times, but his upside has been 21st, 17th, 4th, 19th, 30th. He's done fine at this course. Not the best the last 2 or 3 events, but in general, course fit-wise, he would be a guy that fits my mold, at least going in. So I see him. And then I like the Bez, the Svensson calls are the obvious ones. EVR in the back of my mind just says 3M, Minnesota, all the water. Everyone always says this is the spot. He knows everybody, and then it's like water balls and stuff. So I don't know. Maybe that's wrong, but that's one thing I would see. Matt Wallace could be a guy. What was it? Ron Kloss, PGA Splits 101. He had the stronger fields that he's played in, and it's not like the super strong field, but it's stronger than what we've been seeing in some. And for here, and Wallace was popping in those. He's at 7,200. Don't hate going to a guy like him. Did you have McNeely thoughts at all?
So, look, Matt's playing well. I was all over him last week. He was one of my favorite bets to win. He probably should have been right there. I think he was 9 under over the weekend after barely making the cut. He was on with Colt Most and Sleaze on their podcast and basically just talked about, again, grass types and putting and how if there's anywhere he doesn't feel comfortable, it's the dormant Bermuda like at API and down here. So that's a big part of his game. Obviously, you need him to make every putt he looks at, and if he doesn't feel comfortable on it, I'm okay staying away this week.
And we talked pre-show on this one, but I think it's going to be a very tough click for people. But Billy Horschel, this is usually when you play him in Florida.
He rates out very well. Trust me. I know.
Yeah. It's just funny, though, because it's going to be so hard. Someone's on Gim. They're not going to be able to click off Gim and put in Billy Horschel when they low. But look at what Gim's done lately. Look at the game log. Who cares? He'll figure it out. And yet, again, we'll see something where Doug Gim misses the cut and Billy Horschel's T10 somehow going into the last round, and whatever happens. But it's every week, it seems, or when we get to Florida, at least with the swing there. So, interesting note at 7K. You mentioned some of the guys as we hop into the sixes, but Thomas Dietrich, 10.1K last week, or 10.3. I can't remember between him and Olesen. He's even less than Olesen and drops down to 6,900. You got Justin Suh, who you mentioned there. You got Akshay Bhatia, Davis Thompson, big drop down to 6,800. Who are some of these guys in the 6K range? And it's bigger, so you don't have to go through all of it, but maybe just the upper 6K range to start?
Yeah, I mean, all of them. Dietrich, you mentioned, he does rate out pretty well. Don't love the course fit for him, but he's a better golfer than these guys. In terms of other guys here that stand out, I'm going to go back to Suh just because I was all in last week and he's done well here, and I'm kind of willing to overlook that. But I would say Suh stands out quite a bit. Ben Griffin stands out quite a bit. Lee Hodges stands out quite a bit. Carson Young, Johnny Vegas, guys we were all on last week. I would say Hodges is probably my favorite in that range, just because, again, long-term form. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Long-term form has 2 good finishes here, and if you want to use, 3M as a comp course, I think that's where he won, right?
It is. That's what I was going to ask you. In my head every week, I'm not like Mayo where he remembers all this shit and why he remembers it. I just remember shit. Yeah. And that was one to me where I was like, in the back of my mind when I thought of the EVR thing, that was the place, because I think his wife is from there or whatever it is. And then you go to, which kind of means nothing, but then I go to Lee Hodges, who popped and has done well here, 9th and 14th the last couple of years, 24th the last time out, stats-wise looks good long-term, but then is that a thing? Like, it's a TPC course, got a lot of water, like what else is there to it? Anything?
I mean, I think the green types, he does putt really, really well here both times he played here. I think that certainly helps, but he's pretty accurate off the tee. Obviously grew up playing in the wind. Sometimes it's just that. It's just comfort. And he certainly stands out. And actually, I was putting together my first click dummy team earlier, and I landed on 6,500 for my last spot. It's tough not to click Gary Woodland in there, but I think that would be a spot for Lee Hodges.
Woodland, man, quite the record here. But again, he's battling right now. 3 missed cuts and a 39 since his return. Obviously, happy to see him back in the mix, but it's just that's a tougher click to me than Billy Horschel or something like that, who I just feel better about, even though it's $500 savings. It's just I haven't really seen anything. Now, what has Billy O? I say all that. Now, Billy O's not been much better, to be honest. So it's just
no. That's a course history, course fit type of play. And again, it may work this week because he's a direct pivot off Doug Gim, who's probably going to be 16%, 15% owned.
I guess that's a better way to put it. You're reading my mind. It's like here, will Lee Hodges get some ownership? Yes. Will it be Doug Gim levels? Probably not. That would be a spot where I would see the pivot make a little bit more sense, and whether I end up in this spot or not. Like you said, you landed there in your last play. Perfect. Yep. S.H. Kim going into this next range. I know we saw Justin Lower do some stuff, but I just think the setup in the course is totally different here. So I could see S.H. Kim typically, and we had him at 7,900, I think, last time out. And again, not expecting anything crazy, but at this price tag of 6,400, I think about if there is going to be some of that around the green stuff, that's just how I think of him. So maybe S.H. Kim, K.H. Lee is here. C.T. Pan crushed last week. Give me your thoughts on this lower 6K range.
Yeah, again, lots of stuff here. I bet CT Pan this morning at 350 to 1 or something like that. So he's certainly in play. You mentioned Justin Lower. You mentioned S.H. Kim. I think Chan Kim makes a lot of sense. Again, we don't have really good data on him, but I mean, I've been talking about him for a while. He hits a lot of fairways. He makes a lot of birdies. I was shocked that who rated out the best in this range, but it was Dylan Wu at 6,100. And then we talked about Lee Hodges. I always kind of lump him in with Grayson Sigg. I get them confused. They seem like the same type of golfer. So if I'm going to play Hodges, I'll probably play some Grayson Sigg too.
I like Sig. What do you like? So Chan Kim, you've been on this guy too for a while, and I was making fun of you at the first. I don't know why. You know way more than I do about it, but I just still razz you for these things. And then he starts showing up, and he starts showing up again. And now we've actually seen some stuff, 8th and 14th, two of his last 3 starts. But I feel like for whatever reason, I just thought he was more of a fit for something like last week, where you just bomb it out there and go and make birdies. How do you see that setting up here?
So I think one of the reasons why I've liked Chan Kim historically, he's a little bit older. He's probably 34 or so. So he's been around. He's won a lot, right? He won, I think, 8 times on the Japan Asian Tour, which got him into a lot of big events, right? He's played in 12, 15 majors. He's made cuts at a bunch of them as well. So like, I just feel like he is more experienced. He's much more reliable. I don't see him blowing up. He kind of just does everything well, but his strength is certainly off the tee. He is plenty long, hits lots of fairways, and he's in as good a form now as you're going to see, even going back to those back-to-back wins he had on the Korn Ferry Tour last summer.
Yeah, that too. I mean, obviously that's where you were on it before then, and I was kind of like, then that was the happening or the moment for me where I was
you don't get many guys who win twice on the Korn Ferry Tour, let alone back-to-back in the same year. So
yeah, pretty good stuff. That's what I mean. So that one did stand out to me. I was just seeing if there's anybody else here.
Oh, Tyler Duncan, he finished 3rd here, right? I think he has to make sense. He drives it really well. Seems to be a guy that people like to play for some reason.
He's playing for a first-round leader in Showdown. He has a good first name, but other than that, I don't know about the rest.
Yeah, but he was 3rd here last year. People are going to see that he was 3rd here last year behind Kirk and Cole, and then probably just play him from that. So
I do like your. I don't know if you like him as much as you said that he popped, but Dylan Wu, he can come through at 6,100 as well.
I'm probably playing him here in the 5-man. So just get ready.
He's got a 10th and a 30th coming off the 24th. I think he had a solid Sunday round too, specifically. Like he was just feeling it coming in. So I definitely think he's an option here that, again, nobody down here is going to get too crazy. That is one thing about this dynamic pricing that I noticed last week is, yes, we already know. Like it's insane how quickly you know where the ownership's going to go. Mm-hmm. It's Doug. I mean, we can go back up to it, but it's, not to run through it all, but it's Doug Gim, it's Svensson and Bez in that range. It's the guys you mentioned in the 8K range with, like, if people are going to go still to Hostler and List and Jagger and those guys for sure. And then Benny Ann, Eric Cole, Poston, Rory up top, just because they can fit them, and probably maybe one of Henley or somebody else. Like, it's pretty easy to tell where people are going to kind of end up. Yep. So after that, it really does spread out, and it's no longer a thought of, can I play this guy or not? It's like, how much leverage do I want on this guy? Because you kind of know that they're going to just come in that 5 to 10% range, and you can just pick your spots. So, yeah, I do like that aspect of it, at least.
Yeah, and one more guy I mentioned here, I thought he was lower, but flat 6K is our guy, Ben Silverman, your Canadian brethren. He was right there last week. Like, as Knapp started to come back, I think when Silverman got to the 9th hole, he was tied for 3rd, completely ejected on the back 9 and finished tied for 13th. I think if you look, he lost like 5 strokes approach on the back 9 because he kept hitting it out of bounds into the water. But he's a very solid player, hits a ton of fairways. He, again, been around a while, won twice on the Korn Ferry Tour, including last year. I think he lives down here now. I'm not 100% sure, but he's, another 2% guy who I could definitely get behind this week.
Yeah, most of the Canadians just go Florida or Arizona, right? Just to make it easier.
Exactly.
So, just the way it works. But yeah, the one thing I will say that scares me a little bit about that is just, again, hearing you talk out loud and then me putting my quick 2 cents to it is the conditions he saw down the stretch. It was a joke, but I mean, there was some back and forth there for a minute when people were like, okay, are we just going to let Justin Lower get to 15 or 16 under and then watch these guys crumble? Because the wind was picking up down the stretch. It was whipping there in Mexico. You saw a lot of these approach shots for guys like for Valimaki and for Knapp come up short or roll out. I mean, Knapp had, speaking of bouncer, he had 3 or 4 good bounces yesterday, actually, where it could have went in the water or it could have went off and rolled away. But
sure.
I mean, maybe that's what got Silverman. I don't know. It's only such a short period of time in one round. Yeah. He was playing really good golf, and he was late into those groups because of where he'd done in 3 rounds.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like, I'm unwilling to overlook a lot from, especially last week with the weather and the wind and the water and the out of bounds. So, look, at 6K, I'll pretty much play anybody.
Do whatever you want. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I like some of the other guys you mentioned, but I get you for sure. Who else do we got to talk about here? I'll tell the Ben Martin story in a second for those that haven't heard it from the Waste Management, but I guess for the 5K range, like Novak, Bramlett, Lashley, some of these guys that I see popping early on, what's your take on some of these upper 5K guys?
Yeah, so, I mean, I did have Ben Martin star just because we're back on Bermuda, so obviously that. I think the two that make the most sense are probably right at the top there, and Ryder and Novak. With Ryder, it's your long-term form course history play. With Novak, that's your recent form play. I think people will play Carl Yuan again. They just like to play him. I don't play him too often. Ryan Palmer is there, just a name that people know. And then I think Echeverria, right? He just seems to like this kind of golf. Didn't play great last week, but still made the cut. Obviously won. I don't know where he won, Corrales or something last year. 5,700. He's the type of player that I would take a shot on down here.
Yeah, the Sam Ryder history you just talked about, and then also Novak in recent form plus that. Lashley's missed a couple cuts here, but he was popping a little bit too. I heard some people mentioning him. So, what was the other guy I wanted to check real quick? Neesmith?
Yeah, that's your guy. He's down there for sure.
Man, he's been bad lately, but yeah, his results here are just kind of like if you need a cut, 25th, 36th, 38th, that's what he's been doing. What he will do, I don't know. One of the guys that we know, his caddy buddy is actually on Bridgman's bag. And that's what he was talking about, saying his guy's really in good shape. But I mean, like last week, missed the cut. I just don't remember by how much. And who's that other guy you told me about? Keep an eye on. Oh, Joe Highsmith.
Yeah.
What about him?
He's a West Coast guy. Probably not what I'm going to do here. But if you want guys from this part of the world who I think could play well, I mean, you could talk me into Camilo Villegas here just because Jimmy Stanger, who I think people played last week, surprisingly, he's a Bermuda guy, plays pretty well. Probably does he? 5,400.
Okay, 5,400. Yes,
yeah, these guys are down there pretty low. And then I think the one that will get stayed pretty high is going to be Parker Cootie. He's made a few cuts in a row now. He's basically the Stone Minute, 5,100. That just seems like a very, very low price for a guy who was 25th at the Farmers and 24th in Mexico. So,
yeah, feels like a mistake. Made him same price as his brother. Not like a big price mistake where like lock him in. I'm just saying like it just maybe the air. I can tell you for a fact today they were getting their pricing out late because I was texting my rep for the first look show, just seeing like, hey, it's usually out. What's the plan here? No NFL. We should be good. Oh, it'll be out in a minute. And the WD comes up for Vince Whaley. And it's Mac Meisner gets in. And so then I'm like, oh, damn, I hope they got that before they put it out. 10 minutes later, pricing comes out. You scroll to the very bottom, Mac Meisner, 5K. It's like they just said, screw it, throw him on there. We'll get him into the pricing. So not sure. But yeah, real quick, I'm with you on a lot of those guys. Don't have much more to add. The Ben Martin story, people want to tell it. He actually does pop up this week as a guy that you could go to. You talked about, obviously, Bermuda Benny. We've talked about him plenty. 5th here last year. He's made the cut every time he's played it, I believe. Even back when there used to be like 75 and whatever. But he is in the field. He missed the cut in Phoenix, and it was round 2. And I don't know, you know this course. I've been there. I feel like there was still enough kids around. But anyway, a dad basically was there. His shot went over the green, par 5, went in the bunker up front, gets it out of the bunker. It rolls off the green and down into the matted down rough. So it kind of sucked. They're all pissed off as they huddle over there. A dad has like his 2-year-old. You're a dad. I'm a dad. Like you get it. Like, well, the kid was doing nothing. I can promise you. I mean, my guy is bad. My little guy. He's 3. Maybe he'd be impossible to bring to a course. This kid was good. He was doing nothing. The dad goes to pick him up, put him on his shoulders, and try and stay out of the way completely. And the caddy just like snapped. And the caddy's like, take the kid and go over there. And Ben's like, yeah, please take the kid. And I was like, oh, and so the crowd was kind of like taken aback a little bit. And then we're like, oh, all right, whatever, we'll see. And then, these guys are betting on his shot and all this stuff. And anyway, he's already tilted. He clicks it up. It goes way past the cup, like 15 feet, 20 feet the other way. And I just yelled out, I said, kid karma. And then everyone started laughing, and someone's like, Ben Martin hates kids. And they just kept piling on this guy. And you could tell he was like, the back of his neck turns red. He's just not impressed. And then he goes up and misses the putt too and makes bogey on that. He kind of like blows it off and just shakes his head. And then somebody yells, good luck on 16, Ben, because this is hole 13. And he's coming up to the party hole on 16. So nothing crazy, but I just thought, pretty funny. Don't bring Ben Martin around your kids. There is kid karma if you want to talk shit to kids when they're not even really doing anything. That's what happens, right?
Yeah, and this is an event, though. I mean, it's not going to be wild like Phoenix was. There will be a lot of kids out there this week. That's for sure.
I can say this too because I also didn't get to talk a lot about the Phoenix Strip, nor do I care anymore. But I would much rather. It was a great time. We had the Ship It Nation crew out there. A bunch of the Degenerates 75 was a good time with everybody. But I would much rather be at this event. I'm over that event now. It's not even like maybe I'm old and I'm a boomer now. I don't know. I've done it enough times. It's my 4th time. It's just not even, it's what people said. It's just not the same. It sucked because of the rain. Usually there's a lot of room to stand on hills and sit on the grass and, get out of the way. Because of the rain and the mud, everybody was jammed into the cart path in that area where it was just overdone, man. It was overcooked for sure. So
probably the weather put you over the edge too. So
yeah, brutal. I mean, better than my weather. I was coming out of a snowstorm up here in Canada, but other than that, yeah, I mean, I would much rather be at this event with you this week, down there having a good time. But let's move on. I got nothing else when it comes to DraftKings. You talked about a couple cash game cornerstones. We usually do this quick when Kenny's not on. If you had to guess the cash game cornerstones, I think you said Svensson and Bez, right?
Yeah.
All right. Who would the other two be that you think that he would pop in? Gim, maybe? He always says it's...
probably Gim. I think he would play Dylan Liu. I think if he looked at it with that price, and he's probably going to want to play Cole and Rory or Cole and Henley or something like that. So, yeah, probably some Dylan Liu action.
I'm going to say we'll get Wu in the bonus section, but I'm going to say Cole, Svensson, Bez, and Gim. I think that's a good start to your cash game lineup, and then go where you can from there. You've mentioned the other ones. I saved the betting segment for you because usually it's me tailing some of your stuff anyway. I'll confirm which ones I tailed on. Last week, I think I told you, I forget what I said exactly about Nap. I'm pretty honest about that. I think I said that's terrible, and that's a terrible idea at that number. No chance in hell or something like that. And then you go on and get...
Even Josh said the same thing. So I was talking with Slep, and he tailed, or I think he made a bunch of his own bets, but he bet everybody plus the top 5 on Nap. He deleted the outright because he said he can't win and only bet the top 5.
Oh, just brutal, man. Like that's what it is. But I guess, like you said, you would have a harder time missing that one,
of course,
after everything else. And it was, when you now thinking back, I know hindsight's 20/20, but you look back, you're like, the Smiley interview, not because of that tidbit or that nugget, but what he was saying was, he obviously didn't manifest it. It turned out he did manifest the win, but it's like, he's saying, this is the course for me.
These guys know what courses they're going to play well at. Yeah. Like, it doesn't always work out, but yes, if
it's going to go well, this is the place for me. And sure enough, it did. I loved your comment. I forget who the response was to, when you're like, it turns out when you play like Tiger Woods for 3 days, things go pretty well. That was a good one too. All right, who do you got for betting? Bets this week on we'll do PGA Tour first. We'll get some bonuses in there.
Yeah, pretty choppy. Like I kind of made up my mind a couple of days ago who I was going to bet this week, and I just went with it. So Eric Cole, 33-1, Benny On, 45-1, Keith Mitchell at 50, Luke List at 55, Adam Svensson at 60, and then just $10 on CT Pan at 350-1 because why not?
Yeah, I didn't do the CT Pan one, and I can confirm your winner this week will be Eric Cole, because I said that's a loser number for Eric Cole as well. I'm pretty sure I'm with you on the other 4. Sure. And then I forget who my long shot was that I liked that I added. It might have been, who did we talk about earlier? It might have been, I forget who it is. I'll post it out in the Discord over at Ship It Nation. But yeah, there was somebody I hopped on that was a long shot, but those other 4 of your 6, the mid-range of your guys, not Cole, not Pan, I jumped on with you. I like those ones. Overseas, real quick, do the DP World Tour. What do we got there?
Yeah, that's a big card again. I Went with long shots there. So I went back to our guy Nacho after the second last week. That was painful, but he was about the same number, 55-1. Hugo Cusad, who is a Challenge Tour, I think he was number 1 on the Challenge Tour last year at 66. And then since they're down in South Africa, I bet 4 of the long shot South Africans. Ryan Van Velzen at 66, Dion Jermeshoes at 125, Daniel Van Tonder at 200, and Aki Stridham also at 200-1.
I bet them all. I bet those last 3 bigger than the first 3. Just
there you go.
I do like those 3 quite a bit that you said. For whatever reason, they stood out to me.
You get the each ways, you might as well. You can get 8 places for you probably, so just take as much as you can.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, there was like good 8 places on those ones versus some of the other ones they really screw you on where it's like top 5 is this, 8, you lose a bunch of points. You lose some, but not as much with those guys, and I just like them, and we bet them in the past. The DG guy, I don't know how to say his name, but definitely bet him at least a few times, so we're going to try and get that one set up. We talked a little live earlier with AK, but you had a few bets over there. What was the ones that stood out? I think some got cut now.
Yeah, I'm going to regret these because it's probably going to be either DJ or Bryson who wins. But so most of these guys played the Asian Tour event this past week. Live numbers have been posted there for a couple weeks now for this event, just trying to drop some interest. So as those guys were climbing the leaderboard, these numbers weren't changing. So I bet Matt Wolff at 50, Mito at 60, and Lucas Herbert at 80. And again, all those numbers are probably cut in half at this point. So we might not win, but we got those Sklansky bucks.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't see what the other 2 did, but I know Mito was up the board.
They were all in the top 10. Yeah, Mito probably should have won. He had one really, really bad round, which, Mito can do. Wolff was about 9th or 8th, and I think Lucas Herbert was also somewhere in the top 10. So
I think I want to ask you one more thing. Actually, it's funny, but I'm going to just say one and done quick. You don't have to get into it, but I'm going to put Eric Cole in one and done, I think, since I didn't want to bet him with you. If he comes through and gets the job done somehow, maybe that's the spot to use him. I never care about it as much because I suck at one and done. My dad is just crushing right now. I think he's in the top 200. Okay. He just plays the chalkiest guy every week. I told him the rules are I can't talk you in or out of any plays. Like if you have a question about a guy, I'll answer it. I send him the golf betting system where you can kind of just see like all he does is look at the recent form in the course history and then pounds it together. And every week, like last week, Brandon Wu. I'm like, of course he's going to do it again, Dad. Like, great pick. Yep. Brandon Wu does just fine. 13th place. Like he just always finds it. So good for him. But maybe it's teaching me a thing about one and done. I do want to ask you though, Full Swing season 2 is coming out. I'm assuming you watched season 1 and went through all of that. Were you on team F1, this is going to change the world for golf? Or were you on that it's just going to be people that like golf that are interested in this series because finally you get to go behind the scenes and see what's up?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the latter. I'm not an F1 fan. I don't watch it, haven't watched the show, but yeah, this show is for us. It's not for anybody.
I feel like ratings might have went down since it came out, but people were like saying it's going to be the be all end all to like put it on the map.
These guys aren't that personable. Like even a big personality like Brooks, right? He doesn't come across well on camera. Matt Fitz, I love.
Right.
The masses aren't going to love him. Morikawa is not interesting. Rory is honestly not really that interesting of a person outside of golf. So yeah,
let's see how it goes. But it's definitely for us. I thought last season they should have led. It wouldn't really matter probably, but I thought they should have led with the Joel Damon or Tony Finau episode. Like the first episode, everyone knows Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas, but I don't even think they know how to gamble. Like they were betting 1,000 straight on picking the right card out of a 52 card deck. And
that was for the cameras. That was for the cameras. Yeah.
Had to be like just no. I
think this one will be better just because there was just more organic drama. I think you're going to see like even guys like Tom Kim and Hidith are a little more interesting, I think, and I feel like there's going to be a lot more smack talking this year. So,
and we got a good year in golf. Like a lot of stuff changed and transferred over, so hopefully we get some of that stuff. I'm certainly excited for it. Did you watch Quarterback? Just a side note.
I did. Yes, I did.
I thought that was very well done, and with a nice balance of like a Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and with Mariota, where it's like, okay, that's pretty good spread of guys, and there was different stories to tell, narrated a little bit better. All right, well, I appreciate it. As always, man, thanks for hopping on. Why don't you let the people know where they can find you? I think you got some other shows coming up as well, maybe starting as early as this evening.
That's right. Off to my son's basketball game now, but then we'll be recording with Joe on for Lines tonight. And then morning tee time with Joe and Chris Powers tomorrow, which should be fun.
Oh, nice. You're bringing out the pleated khakis? RIP DFS Open, but I know you got to play this course after that event this year. That's where the picture came from. Do you got those still?
Probably not, no. But no, we're looking forward to it. Chris is at the match tonight, so hopefully get some good intel from him after that one.
Should be awesome, man. Definitely appreciate you hopping on. As always, we'll have Ryan back again. Thank you guys so much for watching. You know where to find me on X, at Toetag and Tambo. Tidbits will be out Wednesday. As always, those are free. And then at shipitnation.com, you guys can check that out. Use that promo code Mayo to get 10% off. We got a ton going on over there right now. That's going to do it for this week, guys. Let's win some motherfucking money. Degen Nation.